recently had the opportunity to visit a place that I hadn't visited in a long time, a place that had played a role in an earlier stage of my life. I know some of you have been on similar journeys this summer. I don't know if you felt the same. I was a bit unsure, as one can be, whether the place would have changed, as places sometimes do, and whether I would recognize it in that familiar way and feel at home there. You'll be happy to know that my hopes were not dashed. The Washington Square Mall in Tigard, Oregon is doing all right. Unlike our fair Lloyd Center, which seems to have been on hospice care for some time now, the Washington Square Mall is alive as I remember it from my youth. The parking lot is full, the storefronts are occupied, and the shoppers are out. Now, I was thinking about those of us that grew up going to malls. Maybe that was some of you. I know some of you were around before the Lloyd Center was there. You've seen its whole life cycle, a mall life cycle. And you really know that mall feeling. Right? Like if you're from a mall generation and I put you down in front of any shopping mall in America, you would know exactly what to expect and what to do, right? You go in and you start making the loop, right? Mostly staying on the right with some exceptions, and you look in all the windows even though that's not what you're looking for, and you mostly ignore those center kiosks because what are they even doing there? And as you pass each store, even that's not what you're looking for, you think about these things. Do I need a new handbag? That dress might look kind of nice on me. Like, do I need anything engraved right now, right? You never think about engraving until you go to the mall. Think about, maybe I do need something engraved. Maybe if you've got time, you take a side quest into one of the bigger department stores, willingly getting lost in the labyrinth of cosmetics and men's dress shirts and 600 count thread count sheets. And surely while you're there, you go up and down some escalators. There's just so much to take in. Maybe you go to the beating heart of it all, the food court, where you always make the entire loop, even if you know what you're going to get. And you choose what kind of fast food you're going to have, and you sit at the table and you people watch. It's a very distinct experience. I have to say, the minute that I went into Washington Square Mall, I was instantly returned to my mall era, right? That time of adolescence that I spent a lot of time at the mall doing exactly what I can't remember, but something that seemed very compelling at the time. And I was thinking about all this because I read a book earlier this year which really caught my attention. I've been searching for a good time to share its insights with you, and I think that time is now. The book is by a Christian philosopher at Calvin University in Michigan, James K.A. Smith, and it's entitled, "You Are What You Love, The Spiritual Power of Habit." In it, Smith points out that going to the mall has a lot of ritualistic qualities to it. And by that he means a series of prescribed actions that are imbued with some kind of meaning. Actions that people who have done this many times understand. One could almost call it, and Smith does call it this, a liturgy. The mall liturgy. Now think about this with me for one more moment. Think of how those entrances to malls are always kind of like the arched doors of cathedrals, right? Like you're never curious where the entrance is, right there. There's a little narthex always, where you get oriented. There's a little map, tells you where to go. It's like our worship bulletin. Like a church, it's a place that, due to certain architectural features, it seems to exist outside of time and separate from the rest of the world. You are never in a mall and you're like, there's my car, look, it's the outside world. No, just like rarely are you in a church and you can see the parking lot. You are also, you don't know what time it is. Like in the mall, you move around the edges, right, like you would in a basilica, and you come across these distinct little chapels that kind of invite you in, right? Similarly, there's these little stores, and each of them have ushers, right? The salespeople who are skilled at just kind of helping you get in and settled, and you can kind of choose how you want to engage and feel comfortable as you explore, hoping to find what you're looking for. When you find the thing you're looking for, you bring it up to the altar in ceremonial fashion. Just like we queue up for communion, and then the transaction's done and you leave. And what Smith points out, which is so interesting to me, is that just like other human rituals, the liturgy of the mall is a ritual that's designed to tell us a story about who we are and about what will make us whole, about what will help us thrive. Now, its story is the story of consumerism, of course, right? This idea that by acquiring new things, we will fix whatever's wrong with us. Our pimply face, our growing midsection, our modest means, right? Those are just the surface things. They're connected on a deeper level to things like our loneliness and isolation, our uncertainties and fears, even our mortality. It's a feeling like if I could just get this right, if I could just find the perfect thing, then I will be fulfilled. I'll be like all those people on TV, who are also part of this gambit, by the way, that seem so satisfied. Now, of course, no one says this out loud. You don't walk into a mall and the greeter says, "Today we're going to try to convince you that if you purchase things, you'll be truly happy." Nobody says that. They don't need to. It's a ritual. It's embodied, and it's transmitted through many different channels, through architecture and symbolism and habits, and also the other people who are there walking around engaging in this ritual with you. When we go there, we are being shaped without even necessarily knowing that we are. And the implications of that are pretty significant, because this is about winning over more than our minds and our wallets. It's about training our hearts, teaching us what we should love. And you are what you love. Of course, there's sort of a dark underbelly to all of this, which is, of course, that it doesn't work. It's actually not bringing us what we long for. That's not to say we never buy anything satisfying, or that it's not fun to go to the mall. I've just been there. It's kind of fun. I bought some things that were moderately satisfying. Of course that's true. It's just to say that the underlying myth of consumerism doesn't truly serve us. In the end, it doesn't satiate the hunger that is deep within our hearts. And this is in part because consumerism is never complete. There's always more things to acquire, which can devastate us economically and certainly environmentally and also emotionally. We can't solve our isolation with stuff, but we can die trying and kill a lot of our earth doing it. Now, Smith argues that there are many such secular liturgies in which we participate all the time. When we go to the gym, there's a liturgy. When we go to the football stadium, there's a liturgy. It's very distinct. Try not doing it right. You will find out. When we go to the university, academic setting, there's a liturgy. When we enter the digital world on our phones, there's a liturgy. It's all liturgy. It's a series of prescribed actions that have a particular story to tell us about who we are and what will make us whole. And part of Smith's aim is just to get us to think that way, to like put on our liturgical lenses, Tom Cruise would do in Mission Impossible, and to see what's there, to look at the patterns we're engaged in and to plumb them for their true meanings and impact on our self-perception. Now, it's also his purpose to get us to think about what we do in here a little bit differently, to get us think about what our liturgy means a bit differently. Now, I know I've said this before, and it's related to my research about the secularization of our culture, but the church, unfortunately, kind of shot itself in the foot by spending so many years framing spiritual development as Christian education. From that perspective, there was a body of knowledge one acquired to become a Christian. It's different in different settings. Something like the meaning of the story of the Good Samaritan and the Apostles' Creed. I bet a lot of you can still say it. And the names of the 4 Gospels, right? And unfortunately, many people who moved through our Christian education programs in that era got to confirmation, having learned all those things, and then considered themselves to have graduated from church. And they never came back. I'm sure all of us can think of young people that used to be in this space that fall into that category. They do come back occasionally. It's called homecoming. It's on Christmas Eve. Where they kind of visit and think, this is so nice. Remember this time in my life that then ended, right? We failed to communicate that spiritual development is an ongoing process of formation, which of course can change over time but continues throughout. It's less like a high school course and more like trying to figure out how to stay physically active over the course of the lifetime. The form may change, but the need remains constant as we keep up with changes in our bodies and work to metabolize the choices we make at the food court. So liturgy is something to be practiced, to be habituated, so that our love remains focused in the right direction. And that is Smith's point, right? That all day, every day, we're shaped by all kinds of secular liturgies that want to tell us who we are. And then we come back here on a regular basis so that we can be shaped by this liturgy, a counter liturgy, one might call it, that connects us to a deeper truth about our identity. Now, interestingly, it seems to be sort of the same thing that the Apostle Paul is talking about in his first letter to Timothy, his mentee serving in ministry in the church in Ephesus. Now, I have to say, 1 Timothy and the other pastoral epistles are not my go-to preaching texts, because it takes a lot of work and a lot of unpacking to kind of work around the very anti-woman kind of patriarchal instructions sprinkled through those letters and still have time to make an interesting point. Those letters reflect the cultural assumptions of their time, and they reflect a growing desire among those early Christians to fit in with those broader cultural patterns so that they wouldn't be exiles. But still, they're really tricky texts. But I wanted to give it a go in this series because it seems fun, and I'm always up for an adventure. But also because these letters have this helpful thread related to what we're talking about liturgy, that part of the main challenge facing Timothy at the time these letters were written were other teachers who had different ideas about what Christianity was meant to be. And Timothy is having to confront and challenge and reframe these ideas for folks who are constantly being exposed to them. And Paul's trying to help him do that work. Paul wants Timothy to know that it takes focus and thoughtfulness, a pure heart, a good conscience, and sincere faith, in Paul's words, to keep a group of hearts focused on the true promises of the gospel, which are grace and life. I don't think it's so different for us now, right? We're exposed to so many stories, right? Probably more now than any generation before us. And we're not just hearing or reading them. We're being led through patterns of embodying them as we go about the world. And some of them I think are fairly benign, and some of them are pretty harmful. And so then we come to church, and part of our purpose in this time is to undo some of that other formation and to refocus on what truly gives life and wholeness. Right? We gather in this place, we're surrounded by symbols and sacramental objects. We have these words that we say, and we're called into the presence of the sacred. We admit that we're imperfect in a spirit of grace. We're offered pardon. We seek illumination to hear from sacred wisdom. We sing praise from our hearts and joy. Giving thanks for our blessing, we return a portion of that what we have to the broader community. And it's in revisiting this story of salvation together, not just in words and thoughts, but in body and heart, that we constantly, again and again, relearn who we are and remember what we love. We plant that message deep in our souls so we don't lose track of it, and so it's there when we need it. And who are we? just in case we've been wandering in the labyrinth of the mall and we've forgotten, we are holy children of God. We are masterpieces of the Creator. We are beloved by the one who is love. And we are saved by a grace that is beyond our understanding. We are warriors for justice and harbingers of peace, and we are conduits of mercy into this world. We are, every one of us, part of a body, each indispensable, wanted, and needed. And we are each guests at a feast that is overflowing with abundance. We are enough, and together we have enough. And I think it's enough to just hear those things and to sing them and pray them and sit in silence as they sink into it. I think it's also important to know that our understanding of these truths has implications far beyond our own well-being. Our individual orientation, our habituation into the ways of mercy and justice and love, that is a social matter rippling out from our perspectives, habits, and choices to bless the world. That's our liturgy. And I wanted to bring that message to you here on Kickoff Sunday, even though we're here every week. But as we start this new year, it seems an appropriate time to remind us of how important that is. To remind us of why we come here every week and shake each other's hand and say peace to you, and why we come here to sing words to old songs that maybe sometimes sing in our hearts and sometimes don't make sense to us, why we come here, talk to our kids, and teach them the stories of our faith. We do that to habituate ourselves to the values and to the love that we believe God has called us to. And to celebrate that this place is still alive. Some might be surprised to know it. To know that these habits are still active after thousands of years and that we are here offering ourselves to them in this new time. And I would just ask that God would bless the efforts that we undertake this year, bless our spiritual habits, bless this interval that we enter in this season ahead, that it might bear fruit for us as we do it together. Ask all these things in the name of the God who created us, redeemed us, and sustained us always. Amen. We're going to respond in song.